This is Support is Sexy, episode 461, with Rachel Rosen, founder and CEO of S.P.A.R.K. Welcome to Support is Sexy. I'm your host, Elaine Fluker, entrepreneur, author, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I bring you inspiring women entrepreneurs who share their wins and lessons to help you take your business to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here. You know, it just would not be the same without you. And if you are a woman entrepreneur, a coach, a consultant, anyone who wants to get your message out there, share your expertise with the world, connect with new audiences again and again, you must consider podcast guesting. It is a great way to grow your business and to share your message. Now, if you want to know how to be an unforgettable podcast guest, just download my free guide at girlonpodcastgift.com. That's girlonpodcastgift.com. A free guide on how to be an unforgettable podcast guest for all the right reasons. Now, today, I really enjoyed my conversation with our guest, Rachel Rosen. Rachel is the founder and CEO of a company called S.P.A.R.K, a company and a card game called S.P.A.R.K, which you will hear all about in this episode. But in this episode, we talk about courageous leadership, inclusive conversation, vulnerability in entrepreneurship, and why Rachel says it takes courage to stay at the table when things get messy. So we're going to hop right into it. Great conversation with Rachel Rosen. I know you're going to enjoy it. Here we go. So Rachel, thank you so much for joining us for an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to chat with you again.
Yeah, right on. It's so great to be here. I'm honored to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Of course. So our first question, when did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
That's a great question. I think about, when I heard fall in love, I thought, it's funny, most of the most powerful love in my life kind of snuck up on me and it didn't happen. It wasn't something that I had thought a lot about. In fact, 2 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you if you would have said that you've fallen in love with entrepreneurship. In 2016, at this time, I was working in a nonprofit and I was happy doing what I was doing. And then I had no idea that summer I was going to have an experience where really it just changed my life. And I just thought for a lot of entrepreneurs, we're in it because we're trying to solve a problem, right? Like we see something that we have a solution for, or we're really excited about a solution that we have that nobody else, like we see a need for something, right? And for me, it started just kind of by accident. Like I had this idea and I thought it must exist. Someone else must have thought of this because we, at the time, were playing card games with my partner's family, and my partner's an African-American woman, and we were at her family's house and we left and we thought, gosh, that was just, there were so many missed opportunities. Like here we are, there were 3 generations there, and we found that there were some cultural kind of people walking on eggshells around cultural differences. And the games that we had available to us didn't facilitate an experience that allowed everybody to really break bread. And it was a great experience, don't get me wrong, but there was just a moment where we were like, dang, I wish there were more ways for us to share stories that, especially across generation, across culture, that allowed us to really break bread and connect in authentic ways. And so, yeah, I don't know. It came out of, there's got to be more out there, because I was ready to get on Amazon and go buy whatever the game was, and there was nothing. And I thought, what the heck? This is the problem. How could this not exist? And so fast forward, I just kind of like a love experience, right? You just have this first spark and you can't get that person or that thing off your mind. And you're like, I have to do this. I can't stop thinking about this. And lo and behold, I threw up an idea on Kickstarter, and then fast forward now. That was in July of 2016. And now here we are with card games that are in the global market, at least 10 different countries in almost every state. there are Spark card games being played at community building events, which is just, it blows me away. It's pretty unbelievable, really.
I love that you talked about that first spark too, sort of like
Mm-hmm.
falling in love. And it's interesting, of course, your company, the card game, everything is called Spark, which we're going to
Yeah.
talk more about. But it's interesting that it was a spark that sort of started everything.
Yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm.
So, what was it? What game, so we can get a sense of the setting, what games were you all playing? Were you just playing regular card games, board games, but there were conversations going on around that you felt like you said, people might have been walking on eggshells or not able to share in a way they might have? And then you just brought up bringing those two experiences together?
It's a little bit hazy, but I do remember the games that were available. I think there was Apples to Apples, and there was another board game. And then what ended up being played was Cards Against Humanity. That game, no judgment to anybody who likes that game. At the time, like it was a game that everybody was like, all right, kids have to go out of the room. The adults are going to have adult conversations. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing led to another. And for context, that week that all this happened, there was a lot going on in the world. And so my background, I'm in the education arena, and I facilitate conversations about inclusion and intersectionality and racial equity and gender equity. And so that week was very, very significant. I'll never forget, because it was a couple days after the Orlando tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was also the week that Alton Sterling was murdered. And so in social media, people were left and right talking and posting and hashtagging all sorts of things about what was going on. But then I was noticing, and it wasn't just with my partner's family, it was everywhere. Like, there was not enough face-to-face conversations about what was going on in the world. And so then fast forward, like, here we were playing the game, and I felt like, man, I wonder what people's thoughts are about what's happening in the world. There's a significant difference in discourse in social media, and I'm impacted by this. And I want to, I think we were wanting to go, I always tend to want to go deep in conversations. And so what happened was, I don't know, have you ever played Cards Against Humanity?
No, I've heard about it though, but I haven't played the game.
Okay. Yeah, so there are some cards. They're not neutral about their intentions. Their tagline is a party game for horrible people.
So, what
And
kind of question? It asks you certain questions, and people, for those of us who don't know exactly what the game, how it works.
yeah, so there are different cards. If you imagine like Go Fish, right? So you would have 8 or maybe 10 cards in your hand that are metaphors or analogies or experiences, and then there are questions, and the questions are prompts. Everything about it is really inappropriate. They're like
Mm.
sexual. There are some anti-Semitic cards in there. They were just culturally
Mm.
really inappropriate, from an equity perspective, from a cultural conscience. That was my experience at the time. Like, I hadn't played it since I was in the work and education. Like, I had maybe heard about it many, many years ago and had seen it, but I hadn't really played it. And so I just had an experience where I thought, there was a card that actually sparked something negative in the room. I can't remember what it was. It certainly wasn't culturally sensitive. And we all kind of had this reaction. And I think we all were trying to figure out how and what, was the right way to navigate the situation. There are a lot of people who love that game. And I'm not by any means on a mission to like bash them, because that would be
Right.
counter to my message. But I just thought, like, here we are in a diverse group. There's got to be another way. This is not, at the least, we should not walk away from a family gathering feeling more tension because of a game,
Hmm.
that should not happen. And so, I just thought, all right, well, let me just see what else is out there. And then here we are.
Here we are. And then you created your own games for everyone to know. You created your own card game that is very much the opposite of at least the experiences that it sounds like you all had with the other game of really
Yeah.
fostering an environment of inclusion.
Yes, exactly. So that, my background is in organizational development and team dynamics. And so I'm really conscious of the fact that, like, when we get a diverse group in the room, there are some things that we need to do to take care of the conditions, and so the game, the acronym really started because of the game. It's the invitation for how the game can be played in terms of how we choose to be together in the game. And the S.P.A.R.K acronym stands for, the game itself is an invitation to share stories. The tagline is, everyone's story matters.
Hmm.
And the S stands for show up authentically, like share your truth. The P stands for pause. So it inherently invites us to listen with our heart, not just our ears. And the A stands for ask, rather than assume what someone's truth is. And the R stands for respect diversity. Everybody has equal time. It's really intended to make sure that the playing field is really level and everyone gets a chance to share. And the K stands for kindly expect some messiness. You can't control the direction of who sparks with whom and what story connects with someone else's truth. And if you go over time, I think it's a beautiful thing to just give space for people to connect and share. And the S.P.A.R.K acronym really is the heart of the experience, in addition to the prompts and the metaphors and stuff that correspond with it. But it really is to normalize that, like, when we give ourselves permission to slow down and to really be with each other and to be intentional about how we're showing up, we have far more in common than we do different. And we have so much of an opportunity to flex kind of new muscles around what it really means to listen, what it really means to be in community with others.
And I think you're such a great example of an entrepreneur who, even if at the time you weren't thinking of yourself as an entrepreneur, but who saw a problem or an issue or something that you started off hoping that it already did exist, right? Some sort of game or something that fostered this conversation, but then seeing that it didn't exist and then deciding to create it. But not only that, also I think you're an example of two, creating something, but also still or making sure that it also aligned with your values. So sometimes that's those things, those different moving pieces, people find it difficult to have it all align, especially from the beginning. But I think you've done so beautifully in creating a game that fosters a conversation, a product that is the product that you wanted and that's taking off and people love it. And then something that aligns with your values and things that are so important to you.
Yeah, it really, that's been very, very intentional. So it feels
Right.
good to be seen, it feels good
Right.
that is something that you experienced for sure.
Now, something that you mentioned, your partner is African American, her family's African American. Tell us a little bit more about your background and where you grew up.
Yeah, so I am a white woman. So I grew up in Texas. I was born in New York, which is complicated, but I grew up in Texas. And then and then I was reborn in Oakland, California. So I lived there for 12 years. Like, I became an adult in California in many ways. I found my voice, I found my passion, I found my myself in many ways. But yeah, it's interesting. My dad is a very eccentric professor, and we moved from upstate New York all the way down to College Station, Texas, back when I was 3 years old because he got a job at the university. And so I was raised in a very conservative town with very progressive liberal parents, which was a very interesting experience. I've had a lot of practice at code switching and kind of translating for my whole life. So it's interesting to see how that's transpired.
How would you describe yourself as a young Rachel growing up in all these different places, especially because you were in environments where, like you said, you felt like you had to do some of the code switching and things that many of us have to do or feel like we have to do?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've done a lot of work. I've found that a lot of entrepreneurs are really into self-development in my experience. And so it's been nice to know that I'm not alone, that like my whole life I've been trying to figure myself out and get better, do better, kind of learn and grow in different ways. And I can't say that when I was little, I didn't have the gift of adults around me that fostered that type of learning and growing and self-development. I didn't have access to a lot of confident women shining on each other and supporting each other. That's why I love your podcast and what you do, because, in Texas, my only exposure to women as a young girl was women bringing each other down, even female friends, talking about each other, bullying each other in school. I always have had a very bright light and a lot of positivity in my spirit. But like, as I look back on my childhood, there was so much of my light that was dimmed because of others, and because I didn't have exposure to other ways, And so when my parents got divorced when I was 10, the rug got pulled out from under me. And I just really went into a shell because I thought, I don't know who to trust. Like, it threw me off. And I remember thinking that everybody I loved had betrayed me. Like, everyone was in on this secret that I didn't know about, So that's why I value integrity so much, because there's just something that is so deeply painful when people are not and when you're little, right? This is my
So
interpretation of
it's
what
your
I
experience
experienced.
of, right,
Yeah.
exactly.
But I just thought, you're not who you showed me you were, Mom. Like, how could you have kept this secret? And who knows if developmentally, I just didn't have the capacity to process what was going on. But I just know it was really, really painful. And so then I just like rebelled against my parents, and I was like, I don't trust y'all. I used to have a really close relationship with them, but middle school is already so hard. And so I got wrapped up in like everything from peer pressure. I wanted to be in the popular crowd. I wanted to never be at home. I wanted to be dating all the good looking people. I just wanted to fit in because I didn't feel like I fit in at home. And then, yeah, it took me a lot of years to stop marching to the beat of other people's drums. It really wasn't until I was 29 when I got out of a relationship that was really painful, that I really found myself.
Was it a pivotal moment for you after the relationship, or I should say, was part of that pivotal moment after the relationship something specific that happened, or was it a main decision that you made, or was it, getting coaching or therapy? And I ask that just for people who, you went through it in your younger years, but some people might be going through that now, or this feeling of trying to fit in even with your business. And especially now we are so much more out front by meaning social media or branding and all these other things that people feel like they need to have to do. Sometimes you can get caught up in what everybody else thinks, right? So
Of course.
you might be spiraling even as an adult now. So what was it for you, if you remember, after the relationship? I know it sounds like it was a hard parting, or I don't like to say breakup, but what helped you sort of get through it?
Great question. I oftentimes talk about that period of my life as the time when I stopped running from myself.
Mm.
And it was because my body shut down. Like literally, I am a for better, for worse, like a very, very driven, motivated, determined. Some people could call that stubborn because I'm a Taurus, but like I really, really, when I commit to something, I go all in. And so I was in a marriage, I was in a place where for years I had tried to convince myself, because everybody else said this is as good as it gets, or like, this is what you should do. I lived a life of shoulds for so many years. The only place I didn't do that was in my job as a teacher and as a school leader. But in my relationships, in my personal life, I lived a life of shoulds. And I just woke up one day and I was so unhappy. Like, it was only a year into a marriage, and I thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? Like I literally was having anxiety. Like I had never had shortness of breath. I had never had panic attacks, but it was just like the timing of that relationship was really, really hard. It just wasn't the right thing. It really was painful. And so I got therapy that year. I think it was 2012 or maybe 2011. I started seeing a therapist because I just didn't know myself anymore. And I was really confused about how I had gotten into this place, and my body was starting to talk to me. Like I had acne, my stomach was always hurting. Like I said, like I would have run until I couldn't run anymore, but my body was saying, you have to slow down. Like we are trying to tell you, you have to get out of this.
Right. Your body will have a reaction to your circumstance. Yeah.
Exactly. That's why I emphasize wholeness and self-care and self-preservation so much in my work, because it was the most painful couple years of my life. And a relationship it was the hardest thing I had ever done. Mainly, for a number of reasons, but because I had lived this life of shoulds, I was so afraid that I had put on this face that I was somebody else. It was easier for me to smile and keep running than it was to be really true and authentic about my pain. And so the most confronting thing was telling people I wasn't who they thought I was, and sharing what surfaced in therapy, which was, all the ways in which this very traumatic sexual trauma had impacted me. And that's why I was running. Like it was really deep. Like therapy is once you
you start peeling back the layers, right?
Oh man, you start realizing how much you have stuffed and like pushed away. So I look back on that chapter, those 2 years, as very formative. And just like anything in my life since then, the most painful things have always come out to be the most rewarding when I'm really committed to growing. And in the end, it was the most powerful thing. And that ultimately soon thereafter, I fell in love with the love of my life. And
Oh,
she has been, that's when you know the type of love that you actually deserve and that is right for your heart and your spirit, then everything changes.
that's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. I appreciate it and how openly you shared. And I
Mm,
love that you said too that you look back on that chapter. So for people listening to catch that, it's a chapter of your life for all of us, right? Sometimes we think that's the whole story or that's the end of the story. But these
right.
experiences, how no matter how difficult they are, even the highlights, it's a chapter that you keep
Mm.
moving, you learn from it, and you keep growing, right?
That's right. That's right. And like they're literally what you learn about yourself
Right.
is you see the people who are your people so crystal clearly in everything. The parallel to entrepreneurship is when you take a leap of faith and you're vulnerable and you say, "Hey, I have this idea. Would you be willing to share it or give me feedback?" It's vulnerable. It's very vulnerable to come out in many ways and share what your truth is. Now, for me, I was sharing, like I said, the most painful part was admitting that I had to step out of a relationship that I had committed to. I didn't take it lightly. I don't take marriage lightly. So it was painful for me to tell my community and people who I loved that I made a mistake. I don't regret anything, but it wasn't the right thing. And I had all these signs and signals that like I needed to slow down, but I didn't listen. And so I learned to trust my intuition after I finally walked away and broke free. And from that moment, me and my intuition are like ride or die. We have,
You and
I
your
know,
intuition, right? Till the
that.
end.
Yeah, and then you see your people so clearly, the people who walked away and show hate and anger and judgment.
Those
You know
ain't your
what?
people.
That's right. You don't need that energy in your life anyway. And people who refuse to see you and hear you, that's not the energy you need in your life. And similar to entrepreneurship, like the people who don't tell you you're crazy or they say, don't do that, don't take the risk. It's like, you know what? I don't need that energy in my life. This is my light. This is my intuition. I have a solution to a problem that I see. I finally learned it's taken me so long. I just turned 34 2 days ago, but I'm like,
Oh, happy birthday.
thank you. I was about to say it took me 33, but I'm like, it took me 34 years to figure
Right.
out that most of the hatred and pain and anger that comes toward us is not about us. At the end of the day, we're
Hmm.
all projecting a lot of our stuff. And so I have to always remember that.
And I think something you mentioned too that's important about vulnerability in entrepreneurship. And I think vulnerability takes courage, which just as you've illustrated in sharing your story with us and what you were going through, what you were thinking, even with creating the card game, what was the setting like and those kinds of things. It's all sharing a bit of yourself being vulnerable, which takes courage. And I know courageous leadership is very much a part of your mission.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell us a little bit, how do you define courageous leadership?
So it definitely is at the heart of everything that I do now, which has been an interesting kind of peeling away the layers of the onion so I found myself that took courage to walk away. I realized things weren't as hard as I thought they would be. I was still standing. I wasn't dead. I got my body back. It took a long time to heal, but I came back from that experience. Similarly, with the card game, it takes courage to stay at the table when things get messy. And so at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
day, after all these experiences, I've hosted over 30 events for this card game in 2 years and not even 2 years. And at every event, people are like, wow, it does take courage to stay in this. But when you do it, it's so rewarding. I feel so good. I feel so powerful. And I've gotten more and more questions about like, what is the secret sauce of S.P.A.R.K leadership? How did you actually create this? And so in the leadership that emerged to be these leadership courses that I created, again, as a solution to a challenge that people were bringing to me. And at the heart of it, it takes for me to lead with your heart during times of chaos and stress and uncertainty takes courage to lead with your heart, to trust your heart, and to be vulnerable. One of my friends, Tiara Knox, says vulnerageous leadership is really where it's at, because it's the combination of the two that create a powerful, powerful thing. And because I'm a language nerd and I taught Spanish and have studied etymology, the root word of courage, I don't know if folks know, but it really comes down to the root of heart is corazón in Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
And so courage really does have the word heart in it. it comes to me, it's choosing your heart and choosing what's right and leading in alignment with your values, which nowadays we don't have a president who models leadership with integrity. We don't have most folks in official office. There's so much of a lack of integrity. So to me, I think it takes so much courage to lean in and slow down and pay attention to, am I filtering my decisions through my core values? And if I'm not, then I have to make a really hard decision. And that's courageous leadership right there.
What would you say are 3 ways that our sisters listening, who are mostly women entrepreneurs at different stages of their business, how can they adopt courageous leadership no matter what stage they're in within their organizations or them as an individual?
That's a great question. So three things. I would say, let's just go with the acronym. It has guided me. And so I think the first is show up and continue to stay at the table when it gets hard, because it will get hard.
I love what you said. It takes courage to stay at the table when things get messy.
It does.
It does.
We're wired, I could get into brain science, all this, but it's like, we are wired to avoid discomfort. Our brain is protecting us. And so when we feel uncomfortable, there's a reason why we all have different reactions: fight, flight, or freeze. Now there's more research about disassociating and appeasing are actually other things that we do by default. So it's no accident that we want to get out of there when we're uncomfortable. But nowadays, everything is uncomfortable. And you can't look at your news feed or the headlines without hearing somebody divide the conversation about insert topic here, whether it's race, whether it's gun violence, whether it's education system, whether it's politics. Like, you can't look left and not see conflict. So we have to change our relationship with conflict. And that takes courage to stay at the table. So that's number one, just stay in it. And even if you're triggered, which I call, this is where we begin the journey of emotional intelligence. We got to get to know our emotions like they're our best friends. Mm-hmm. That's emotional intelligence. When you really are that smart with your emotions, that you know them really well, then you can stay there and understand all the nuances of why things are uncomfortable. So that's just step one. Stay in it. Don't give up. Step two is listen, really listen. It takes so much courage to listen, because it's a leadership skill that is what I call a soft skill. There's no handbook that outlines the way that listening is going to change your trajectory of your life. That's like a very technical fix. Leadership, listening as a leader is a very inside out type of strategy and type of skill. And so I always say, if we can pause and do a 3 to 5 second pause in between each sentence. Like, if someone asks you a question, it's okay to pause and say, breathe, 2, 3. What is it that I really want to say right now? Before jumping in.
Right.
That takes a lot of courage, because we're at a time where everything's moving so fast.
And silence makes some people uncomfortable, even those 3 seconds.
Exactly. And I'm like, I used to be that person. I used to be, I've created the thing that is not who I used to be. Everything that I've designed is in service of the version of me that really needed all this, Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of people do that. At least
that's what I did. I needed support. I'm like, I feel alone as a woman entrepreneur. Somebody help me.
Exactly. We do that with each other. I notice a lot of women entrepreneurs are creating the things that they wish they had always had, which is beautiful because it's so personal, right? Mm-hmm. So, so pausing takes courage, changing our relationship with silence, welcome that silence. Again, if you stay at the table with confidence and oh yeah, I'm going to stay here and I'm going to stay here with confidence through this silent pause. People, it's contagious. It actually is contagious. They're looking, we're meaning making machines, and we're looking at body language, whether we know it or not. Our brains are processing, our brains are looking for signals of, should I trust this? Am I safe here? Should I trust this? Am I safe here? And confidence triggers something in our brains that allows us to feel more trust. And so, if you feel it takes practice. Start at home or start somewhere where you have a little bit more comfort, but just notice what happens when you pause 3 to 5 seconds and think about, what do I really want to say right now? What is it that I really want this person to hear? That takes a lot of courage, I think. And then the third one I would just say comes back to asking the right question. It takes courage to think intentionally and think outside the box about the questions that we ask. I'm a communication strategist. I'm a strategist. My brain thinks in strategies and systems. And so it's no coincidence that when I create new prompts and questions for the card game, it's fun to me. It's like a fun puzzle exercise to think about, what is the prompt? What prompt or question could I give people to really bring them into a place of self-reflection? Or, again, it kind of combines the brain science behind what is it that we want to prime the brains to feel in this moment. And so it takes courage to, again, pause and then ask a question that's actually going to take the conversation to a deeper realm, to not stay on the surface and use the default. Like we all have kind of internalized these default questions like, hey, how you doing? Or what's up? When you see somebody new, just try a new question like, hey, what's it like to be you today? What's it feel like to be you?
Yeah, that's a great one. It's so funny because I even notice myself, and I try to catch myself and call myself out loud when I do this, like going to whatever, a cafe or someone, somewhere you may frequent or not, but you're comfortable. So then you don't have that dialogue, like you mentioned, like, am I safe here? But let me speak for myself. I'm sometimes so on autopilot. I'm going up, I'm going to order this. I'm thinking about the to-do list, whatever. And the person behind the counter might say, hey, how you doing? And I go, great. Can I have a blah? I just flow into, I don't even hardly listen. I think they said, how are you doing? I'm just kind of responding, right? Based on, and I've stopped myself several times to be like, girl, I'm not even listening. How are you today? And they'll laugh. People are just like, that's so funny. Everyone always says, I understand. But really sort of like give yourself, even if you're not, well, that is answering a question, but did you even hear what the person said? Could you not be on, you know what I mean? It's literally 3 seconds. And how can you be loving to them in this moment and just say, how are you doing? Or sometimes I've noticed they say, hey, how you doing? How can I help you? And I'll say, good, how are you? And they don't even hear it. So sometimes it even goes the other way. We're also on autopilot. So anyway, I just
exactly. No, that's a great example.
Yeah, you just don't even realize that, like you said, we're all in this habit of hearing or asking the same questions. So changing it up definitely would be a good exercise for people to try and see who actually hears it.
Right. Like just just pay attention, notice. I always say, like, just be curious. That comes with the ask. The ASK acronym is ask, don't assume, and show curiosity over certainty. So and this is particular with diversity, right? So if we have friends or family of different cultural, racial, ethnic backgrounds, then we can't make assumptions about anybody's experience, actually. And so all of the default it can go out the window if you really want to go deep, as far as I'm concerned. And so the card game facilitates beyond the icebreaker experience. That's like, if one of the questions is, if you had a book, what would the title of your first book or album be? And you always hear something fascinating from people, or what is it like? What's something you'll always fight for? Or what's something that's lighting you up today? What's a headline that captures what it's like to be you today? These questions that really take people to a whole different lens and place, right? And I think the experience that you describe at the coffee shop is so common. I have to check myself. It takes courage to be intentional.
Right. And call yourself out, right?
Yeah. And to be like human. Oh, I messed up. I'm sorry. I forgot. Or somebody said, how's it going? And I was like, that's such an interesting question. Do you really want me to answer?
Right, exactly. Do you really want to know?
So, and what's the it? I don't know.
Exactly.
But anyway, it is definitely the power of language. I can't underscore that enough during these times in particular, how much power we actually have with the words that we choose to use. And anybody who has kids knows that, I work with kids, I mentor kids, kids are my heart and my passion, and they are very, very observant, and they listen to what we don't say. They pay attention to the words that we do say, so just it goes across all generations, the power of asking the right question.
I think you're so right. And I think kids too, pay attention to the words that we say, don't say, but also things that we allow. So I'm just thinking about our current administration, love it, hate it, whatever. Just when people are, it bothers me when I hear people try to their best to be dismissive, of the quote unquote rhetoric. Like, no, those are words. Those are powerful. Even if you disagree, even if you turn it off, some people are hearing that. Children are hearing that. They don't understand how someone can talk like this and be in such a high position. It's just a lot more thinking, I think, needs to go into how beyond divisive, how dangerous some of this language is, as we're seeing throughout, hate crimes are up and so many other things. I think even the individual, who I never the person's name, is dismissive too of, oh, I just was joking. Oh, I just language is very, very powerful. So I think that's also important too, of what we allow other people to get away with saying, either around us, about us, to us, or about other people.
Exactly. What we don't say is sometimes, even more powerful than, or powerful in a different flavor, of what we choose not to talk about. The kids are listening. They're paying very close attention, and they're experts in integrity. They get it. They're searching for people who don't walk their talk. They call it out from a mile away.
Right. Even very young kids, you can tell when they kind of are not sure about you. They're not, not even if nothing's quote unquote wrong with you, you can tell when they're not quite comfortable yet. That's because they don't have that barrier between their gut that we all get when we get older. When you're younger, you're just going on your gut, right?
Yes. And that's the power of young people,
So for you, what would you say that you are proudest about with the game, especially? And I want to talk, I know I have to let you go soon, but I do want to talk to you just about even after you created the game, getting it out there, doing a Kickstarter, launching it. How do you get it in people's hands? Just that process. But overall, what would you say you're proudest about the game, the S.P.A.R.K game?
That's a really hard question. There's so many things that I'm proud of, but they all come, I think the common thread of all of them is that every part of this journey has involved community, and I've been recently spelling the word community with a capital UNITY. And the spirit of that, when we are doing something with others and we have, I guess, everything about the game and my approach is really about, a spark is a catalyzer, it sparks something, but then people get to do what they do with their magic, with their unique spark. And that's the coolest part for me, is creating something that is just a spark. And then it becomes a flame because of each person's unique, powerful, authentic, original personality that, with the leaders that I support, with the communities that I've had the opportunity to play the game with, I'll go in and host a team builder and then facilitate a debrief afterward around, what was it like to have your story get heard or have equal airtime, have the opportunity to really share and know that someone wasn't going to interrupt you. And to hear people just say, gosh, I haven't been listened to that well in so long, or like, wow, I feel so much closer to my colleagues. I've known this person for 20 years and I've never asked them that question, and I just learned something new. Or like the leader who now has written a book and is starting her own coaching programs because she had support and she went through the S.P.A.R.K program. It's just to see that it really does start with a spark, and then with community, it becomes something beyond anything I could ever imagine. And I think what I'm super excited about is the opportunity to come back to my roots and be more involved in education this next 2 quarters, because we're rolling out a youth deck, so a S.P.A.R.K kids deck for middle schoolers, and we're putting together some curriculum and we're working on some tools for teachers. And so that's
going to be awesome.
I know, I'm so excited. And that's been really powerful to just see. It does require, again, courage to relinquish control, because being a part of a team and doing market research interviews and genuinely asking your community, is this something you would want? And taking your ego out of the equation, it's not easy. I'm not going to lie. Like, it takes work and it takes more time to counsel with communities and have advisors, be your sounding board, and to not just jump to the next thing. But the power has been in all these focus groups and these conversations of folks who are experiencing the prototype, and they're giving genuine feedback and making everything better because of their input. So I guess, yeah, it all comes down to community with the capital UNITY.
I love that. Now with the game, after you decided that you were going to create this game, I assume then you got the product made. Let me know if I got this wrong, the timeline wrong. Get the product made. Then is it at that point that you decided to do a Kickstarter, or was your Kickstarter before you even made the game? You tell people what it was about, what you had planned to do, and then get the money from that, make the game, and then put it out there? What's your timeline like, just for those listening who might be thinking about launching their own product or doing something in the education space, a product or tool?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think there's not one single solution or one way. My way was very unconventional because I had no background in entrepreneurship, and I had never even filmed a video before. When my Kickstarter video was my very first video to ever publicly create and put out there.
It. And your Kickstarter was very successful, wasn't it?
It was, and I still can't believe it. I think that was my first lesson on vulnerability, because I was very vulnerable in that video, and it was received well, mainly because I didn't try to fake the funk. I was like, this is my first video. I'm doing it because I'm really passionate about this idea that we've cooked up, and here's an example. And I had committed to doing prototype parties, so I had some pictures, and there was just a real authentic realness to everything that I did at that time. So the short answer is no, I did not. The product hadn't been officially produced, printed, and manufactured, because my commitment to the Kickstarter community was, I want to make sure this is responsive to the community needs. So what I will commit to is showing you what I have so far. And I promise you, I'm going to do these prototype parties so that we can get it done right. And then we're going to incorporate your input in the final product, and we're going to have a prototype final kind of launch party in November. So I said, you'll definitely hear from me in 4 months once we've had the chance to really fine tune and finesse this idea with everybody's feedback, and then we'll celebrate. And so that's what we did.
And that was 2016.
It was, yeah. That was 2016.
So then, wow, it's been a whirlwind 2 years, huh?
Yes.
So then you launched the product, and then what was your way of going about making sure that people knew about it? Did you start with that Kickstarter community saying it's available now? If you I guess they already purchased it sort of in advance, but how did you get the word out otherwise?
Yeah, so that's when I learned the power of community gatherings, So I said, everybody on the Kickstarter got a deck. So then I hyped it up, and I created the Facebook group at that time, which, it was 74 backers at the time, I believe, 74 or 84. I have to look back. It was one of those two numbers. And it was, this Facebook group was my space to be like, oh my gosh, it's happening. We only need $100 more. We only need this much. It was kind of a community space at the time to really share updates and to say, hey, the deck is out now. Would you mind passing this on with your network? If you enjoyed the prototype party, would you mind sharing this with a friend?
That community again.
Yeah, I'm telling you, community is everything. And when people really feel invested in it, and they don't feel like there's any hidden behind the curtains conversation, everything begins to change, and now that community is over 300 people, and it's grown because now these folks are behind S.P.A.R.K leadership and all that S.P.A.R.K leadership and courageous leadership represents. And so I think everybody does the whole Kickstarter journey differently, but what's allowed S.P.A.R.K to be so great is both like the community input and small groups of support. Like I have my right-hand man who is just like a brother to me. He's been by my side ever since, So when it comes to tweaking and tuning the design and taking people's feedback, I can't suggest that anybody does that type of thing alone, especially with products, because you can get into a tunnel of keeping the very same thing unless you have support. And so then we got a partnership with a game producer and printer, and now they actually print and produce it and sell it and ship it and stuff for us, because they really they saw that it was successful and they wanted it to be featured on their website.
So now the game is available where? Everywhere?
It is, yeah. So it's on the website, S.P.A.R.K, and then the number 4 community.com, but it's also on the Game Crafters website, which is national, one of the kind of highest in terms of reputation and as far as games go, I guess. It was a whole new industry to get to know and understand, but
you're like, what is this? Excellent.
I know. And so they, it's there right now. And as we get into the education and entrepreneur sector at this time, we're looking at new opportunities. We've started a new Kickstarter, a new I Fund Women, which I wanted to share with your community.
Yes.
For folks who don't know about I Fund Women,
I had Karen Khan on the show, but tell everyone. I love her. Love Karen. Yes, but tell us about I Fund Women.
I love I Fund Women, and
too.
my new project is just off the press. It's just come up. I launched it on my birthday to kind of give birth to this next education chapter on my very birthday. But we are creating an app for teachers, an app for educators, and it's really back at the heart of everything that matters to me, which is supporting communities, supporting individuals to step up and step into their spark in new and different ways. And for educators right now, it has to do with their own staying emotionally grounded during these chaotic, intense times, especially with what just happened on the news yesterday in Tennessee. Every day there's some crisis in schools, it seems like, and I've never felt the tension and stress higher in schools. And so in addition to having an app that helps, if you think about like Fitbit or a meditation app, where you just for 60 seconds a day check in, it would be like that for teachers to check in with themselves and to think about how they want to show up that day. Just take a quick pause and reflect. How do you want to be today? How can we stay connected to your spark given all the uncertainty? And how do we want to be mindful of our blind spots, because we all have blind spots. And when we're under stress and there's so much chaos, blind spots are in the driver's seat. And so then what happens, if you can imagine when you're under stress and I might say something to my partner that I don't really mean. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Leah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to react so quickly. I'm just really stressed or whatever the case may be. You times that by 1,000 for educators and school leaders, because there's so much coming at them on a daily basis. And so my biggest commitment and dedication is to be a part of the conversation around what it means to really, really think differently about reimagining education as it is, and be a part of the conversation around interrupting patterns that are creating the school to prison pipeline, where there are a disproportionate number of young African-American males ending up in the office and being suspended for the very same, any incident, the same behavior that a white boy did. All the research would suggest that African-American males are 3.5 times more likely to be referred or suspended for doing the very same thing. So all that to say, I see a connection between teacher emotional health and wellness, because I've been there, and if we say something that doesn't match our intentions or our core values, that impacts a child's life. It's not just something I said to the person on the street. This is a young person in a classroom. And so I know teachers are working so hard and there's so much. So that's a long way to say we're partnering with educators, and we're excited about this next chapter and supporting them to make sure that they have what they need to feel equipped and empowered during these times.
And where can we support you with I Fund Women? Do you you want to send me a link, or is it a link that you can tell everyone listening?
Yeah, it is. It's let me actually pull it up. So it's on I Fund Women, and I just love that site so much.
I know. It's so great. Everyone, I'll make sure I have a link to the episode with Karen, but it's all about a crowdfunding, I guess you call it crowdfunding site, but it's focused on women. So women creating products and all kinds of beautiful things on there. You must check it out. ifundwomen.com, the letter I. But we're going to find out where Rachel's is when she finds the URL.
Here we go. So ifundwomen.com, and then /projects /S.P.A.R.K. So there's a dash between S.P.A.R.K. @app-for-teachers.
Okay, so I'll make sure I have a link for it.
Basically, if you go to I Fund Women and you type in Spark app or teachers, you'll find something. But yeah.
It'll come up. Excellent. Yeah. Great. That's wonderful. So in closing, Rachel, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Oh, man, that's a hard one. Just one person? I think I have to say at the end of the day, the woman who has been by my side since I was as little as it can be, I would have to thank my mom. She is a huge inspiration for me, and our relationship has come a long way since I was 10 years old, and we have a really close relationship, and she is one of the most caring, giving, loving human beings that has instilled in me so many of the values that drive everything that I do. And so I'd have to say, thank you, Mom. And I just, yeah, I think that's gotta be,
She's the
the answer.
one. I
She's
love
the
it.
one.
Beautiful. Now tell us again how we can support you. I'll make sure I have the iFund Women link, but I'm sure people are interested in finding out about the game and more about you. Tell us website, social media, anything you want to share.
Yeah, right on. So there are a lot of ways that we can stay connected. Probably the easiest way for folks to find me is either on Facebook, Rachel Rosen, Rosen, and I spell my name the right way, Rachel. I
The
don't
right
really,
way.
I don't know. People are like, what, do you have an E or A or whatever? Anyway, Rachel. No judgment to anyone who spells it differently. That's just the way that I
So
know to be
funny.
right. So Rachel V as in Violet Rosen.com is also my website. And on there you can see more about, if you just scroll on the homepage, you can see down below, it says more about the community card game. There's a link that goes to my leadership page for the leadership courses that I host. I'm really active on Instagram too. So everything is either, I stay consistent. So everything is either Rachel V. Rosen, or it's S.P.A.R.K, the number 4 community. That would be the same, S.P.A.R.K4community.com, Instagram, S.P.A.R.K, the number 4 community. And then same thing for S.P.A.R.K for leadership, S.P.A.R.K, the number 4 leadership, S.P.A.R.K, the number 4 leadership at Instagram. And yeah, we're most likely going to be hosting, this is the first time I've shared it with the public, but most likely I'm also in the process of finishing a book. So I'll have a book that comes out in the fall.
Oh, you have to come back and tell us about it. I'm excited.
Yeah, so
That's
there'll be a
big.
lot of fun stuff, a live event in November. And
Nice.
I travel quite a bit. So if folks are looking for workshops or they want to host a S.P.A.R.K event, or they want to do anybody who has a retreat or a camp or an event, it's just a great, 20 to 45 minute icebreaker activity that really warms up the room. And I'd be happy to talk about customized event packages and stuff like that if anybody's interested.
I love that. So everyone, make sure you reach out to Rachel. And your book is coming out this fall, or you're starting to write it now? You're
That's the
planning
first
this?
time I've said it out loud.
Yeah.
It's
I know that makes it so real, right?
right. Yeah. It's like been my secret for a long time. And yeah, I have a book coach. We're working on it.
Oh, that's
It's
beautiful.
over halfway done. So the goal is for it to be done by June or July. So then
Oh, that's awesome. Very good. Oh, I'm so happy for you. It's so great, as I said, to connect with you again. We talked maybe, I don't know how long, maybe was it last month, a few weeks ago? We're going to talk again after this, but I just love what you're doing. I, support you and just love that you're standing up for not only courageous leadership, but for inclusion, which is so important now more than ever, I think.
That's right. Absolutely. And I look forward to keeping the conversations going and having you in the S.P.A.R.K Facebook group.
Yay!
Anybody who wants to come on over to our Facebook group, that one's also S.P.A.R.K and then the number 4 community. Because, yeah, I get to interview Elaine in our space.
Woo!
Yeah, not too far from here. So that's going to be fun.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Before you go, what's a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners about anything?
I'll keep it consistent. Keep leading with your S.P.A.R.K, stay up, show up, pause, ask, respect diversity, and don't forget to be kind to yourself. The K, kindly be okay with messiness when things don't end up perfect. Like your S.P.A.R.K is what the world needs more of, not anybody else's. And so just keep shining.
Excellent. Rachel, thank you so much. Hold on for just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Rachel. That was a good one. Make sure to find out more about her, to find out about S.P.A.R.K, and to see the ways to get in touch with her, that you go to supportissexypodcast.com. Go to that search icon at the top and just type in Rachel, Rachel. Her show notes page will pop up with the links and resources and all the ways to get in touch with her. Supportissexypodcast.com and just type Rachel. All right, so thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Please make sure that you and I are connected on social media at Elaine Fluker at Support is Sexy. I love engaging with you all there, answering questions, asking questions. It's a good time. So make sure that we are connected at Elaine Fluker, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I'm focused on LinkedIn now, so make sure you connect with me there too. Tell me you heard about it on the podcast. All right. So now, until we chat again, always remember that you deserve support. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care.